Peace and blessings to all my goddesses out there. I hope you are taking care of yourselves, mind, body, and spirit, because that is what it is all about. And I say that each and every episode because it's so true. We always have to do a check in to make sure that we're still balanced, mentally, physically, spiritually, emotionally. All of those things need to be in balance in order for us to have a holistic approach to our lives. Now, granted, they cannot be always in balance, and that is why we maintain this connection to some sort of holistic spiritual form of living. Okay. So, welcome back to all of my followers and my listeners. I appreciate each and every one of you. We are growing with each and every episode. Okay. And if you're new to this podcast, be sure to go ahead and follow this podcast, rate this podcast. We are available on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, Audible, and we just continue to grow. I'm even like expanding to different podcast platforms that I've never heard of before. Okay. So I'm super excited about that. Also, want to let you guys know that if you want to support this podcast, that link will also be in the description. And I appreciate anything that you can give to help this podcast get better and better with each episode. Okay. So let's get a little business out of the way. We got some of that out. If you want to follow me, I'm also on social media, on Facebook, on TikTok, also on YouTube as Holistic and Spiritual AF. You'll be able to find me over there, as well as on Instagram, Holistic and Spiritual AF podcast. Okay, so be sure to follow me over there to check out some different types of shorter clips of content, as well as behind the scene gotta see and what it is that I do. Okay, all right, so let's go ahead and jump into it. I'm super excited for this topic. It's been a little bit longer than I wanted to for it to come back to you guys, but it's still managing to be about each week. There's a podcast episode being available for you guys on these platforms. And I like to keep it at least one a week, but we're probably going to pump it up a little bit more and do some shorter ones as well. And we also have a guest speaker that is going to be joining us in August, possibly two, but for sure we got one. And I'm super excited about that as we shift things more to the holistic living side of things. Okay. So we've been focusing pretty much on this season and the past episode, 8 episodes on connecting with your ancestors. We got a huge response on that. A lot of people resonated with that. So obviously we stuck with that. So today we're going to be talking about normalizing loving yourself as a Black woman. And this is extremely, extremely important. And it's also in alignment with healing generational traumas, as well as, healing the generations that come forth. Okay. Because it's directly tied into how we take care of ourselves and the way that our culture is set up, particularly here in the diaspora in America. Is there's a lot of things that we're going to discuss as we go into this further that have affected us mentally, emotionally, as well as physically. And it affects our ability to love ourselves or even take the time out to love ourselves and incorporate that self-love into our lives and into our families. Okay. So we want to talk about today being able to normalize that, where it's not something that it seems like other cultures do on a regular basis, but Black women and women of the African diaspora don't get to experience. Okay. So, as usual, you guys know what I do, and you guys seem to enjoy that a lot, is when I tell my experience and my story. And of course, I always come to my ancestors and I go to God before I start this because I want the words that I'm giving to you guys to be divinely led. I want it to be able to tap into and reach the right people's spirit so that it creates some sort of healing and change inside of your life. Okay. I just did a TikTok live not too long ago talking about healing before everything. Okay. Because that's really where it's at. Healing before manifesting, healing before spell work, healing before trying to get out there and do these complex spiritual sciences without actually beginning to work on ourselves. Because once we work on ourselves and start to heal this trauma within inside of ourselves and our family and our DNA within the generations that come forward, all of the other stuff begins to come as a byproduct. And it also makes you much more vibrating at a much higher frequency so that you're actually able to be having extra accessibility to certain types of DNA downloads and things like that. Okay. So today is wash day for my locks. Okay. Which is like a chore in itself. That's why I was like, let me go ahead and get this podcast out of the way because it's going to take me at least about 3 hours to wash these locks in the regimen that I do. Okay. So I have been locked up now for 7 years. Sometimes I have to think about it. 7 years. I think it was like 2015 I got locked up. And everybody told me that once I got my locks, I was going to go through a journey. And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about because I just want something different. And at that point, I had done everything you could possibly think of to my hair. Okay. I had the shortcut. I wore wigs. I wore weaves. I wore ponytails. I wore braids. I broke my hair off. I had all kinds of crazy scalp issues. I damaged my hair tremendously doing all these different types of hairstyles. But honestly, at this point, before I had gotten my locks, I had already gone natural for 3 years. So I had a pretty nice size fro. And that's just kind of what I did. I kept braids in it, I kept wigs in it, and things like that. It grew out. And then I wanted some sort of a hairstyle. So the choices for me were between the shortcut again, because I used to rock that all the time and that looked really good, framed my face nicely, or I was going to start locks. Okay. Just had no kind of spiritual connection whatsoever. I wish that was my story, but I wasn't quite there yet. Okay. I had already been on my healing journey. I had already been working on the healing aspect of myself, but I didn't realize the journey that I was about to go on just by changing my hairstyle. Okay. So at this point, I was dealing with a lot more people who were teaching me about the right things to eat. I started coming into my vegetarian lifestyle, as well as, what you keep inside of your mind. They were really helping me with the temple aspect of holistic living. So they kept telling me most of them had locks. A lot of them had like Ross locks, freeform locks. There's many different types of locks. Okay. So everybody was like, when you start your locks, you're going to go through this journey. And I was like, child, please, I just need an easy hairstyle. And that's it. Okay. So I started my locks. I had a decent sized fro and I had shrinkage like whoa, okay, because I am a 4C girl, okay, and know this: if you are somebody who is rocking 4C hair, 2C hair, 3C hair, whatever type of natural, beautiful, magnificent curls that you have, which are so unique, like you have a set of curls on the planet like no other, and that in itself is magnificent. That is good hair. Okay. So know that we're going to get in there. We're going to talk about it. I know some of you know what I'm talking about when I say good hair. Okay. Because that's a term that's used particularly in the Black community in America a lot. Okay. And a lot of us that was rocking that 4C, honey, that was not what it was. Okay. And a lot of this was coming from our family. It was coming from society. It was coming from TV. It was coming from all different types of propaganda that we saw around us, which internally affected us whether we knew it or not. Okay. So we went through a lot of different changes. And one of the other episodes, I spoke on the fact that once you have no knowledge of self, then you start to become like a chameleon and you start to try to fit in these different sectors just to be accepted, particularly in America. And that makes it very uncomfortable for us to ever really figure out who we are and be comfortable with ourselves. We have these different personas at work. We're different when we're at church, and we're different when we're with family and with our friends and stuff like that. So we have these different types of personas, never really getting to be 100% fully ourselves, except for like maybe when we're at home and around people that we feel completely comfortable with. Okay. So needless to say, 4C was never really considered as good hair, pretty much since slavery. Okay. So anyway, I got my locks. I had a nice size fro. And then next thing you know, like maybe 2 days into it, it shrunk. Okay. I had a little dangle going on and then boop, boop. It was like, dude, it was like twigs, baby. It shrunk up and it got really short. And that is when the journey began of self-love for me. Okay. Now, like I stated before, I had gone through all these years of different types of healing and stuff like that. And in the beginning for me, because I was on the new age side of things, I was always the youngest person in the group. And I was always a lot of times the only Black person inside of the group. So it was always, I was uncomfortable. Okay, let's put it that way. Even though they were accepting and they were nice to me, it still was, you know how it is. It still was a little off. Okay. So the journey begins for me when I've got these short, like locks that are just kind of not laying down, not doing anything that I want. You cannot manage this hair. This hair has a mind of its own. And I went through a lot of changes for like the first couple of months, like maybe like 2 or 3 months, where I was constantly trying to style it. I mean, these these locks were too short to be trying to style. I should have left them alone kept them moisturized, took care of my scalp, which desperately needed healing at the time, and called it a day, honey. But that's when I realized that I was seeing myself in the mirror as I was, with no wigs, no braids, no weave, no nothing, just me and my beautiful face and this 4C hair that shrinks like that. And I was trying to manipulate it and trying to make it do all of these things. And, I realized later on, once I finally got to a place, which, like I said, was about maybe 3 to 5 months actually, where I was like, this is it. You know what I'm saying? This is who I am. And this is how I present myself into the world, And so I went out there as I am, the way that God, made me. And I started to come into loving myself, you know what I'm saying, as I was with those locks. And sure enough, as hair does, it began to grow, but so did I. I went on this journey of then starting to tap into really getting involved in the traditional African spirituality and learning about it. And so a lot more of the people that I was around, they were natural. You saw all different styles of beautiful hair on Black women, as our hair is like no other. Okay, so let me pause right there to talk about the magnificence of our hair as women of the African diaspora. We have hair like no other person on the planet. Okay. Our curls cannot be mimicked. Okay. Our curls can then also transition into many different styles. Okay. We can have it tight curls. We can have it wavy curls. We can have it bone straight if we want to. We can rock braids. We can lock it up. It's all different types of styles that we can have. And the versatility of our hair is unlike any other hair on the planet. Okay. So that's just the obvious right there, physical factor of it. But as I began to start to study and learn more about melanin, about, who we are as a people and where we come from, also started to learn about the fact that our hair is antennas. Our hair are antennas to the cosmos. Okay. The pattern of the curl and the coil of 4C, 3C, 2C hair is the exact same pattern as the pattern of the Milky Way. That is Black girl magic, okay? That is good hair right there, okay? So as I started to find out these different things, that I never knew about myself and about my hair, that gave me a sense of pride. You know what I'm saying? That made me start to look at and understand my hair and my appearance and what a gift it was to have this type of hair, and my antennas and its connection to the cosmos on a whole nother level. Okay. So now I'm starting to come into more and more of loving myself as I am, unadulterated me. And during this time, I had gone through a phase where I just wasn't wearing makeup that much. And sometimes I'm like that, it is what it is. It's a choice. I have grown to a certain point where sometimes I wear makeup, sometimes I don't. I never really have worn a whole lot of makeup. That's just not me. But for me, it was very important during this phase for me to go through this, to love my physical appearance. Okay. And I didn't realize how much trauma was connected to that from childhood, and then of course that was trauma that was passed down from the generation before and the generation before, and each generation before kind of had it a little worse, starting from slavery. Let's face it, there's things that we have stored inside of our DNA as people of the African diaspora, particularly over here in America, that a lot of times we've just accepted as normal and we don't question it. And a lot of times we don't change it. It's like, oh, that's just the way it was. But really, it wasn't that way until slavery. Okay. So one of those things is our hair. Our hair, the straighter it is, the closer to European it is, the more it's considered as good hair. Okay. Now I grew up during a time where, and I'll never forget this, when I was a little girl, sometimes I think about, what my spirit must have been thinking back then. And I can go ahead and trace it back to early years. But I remember when I was watching TV, honey, I didn't see nobody that looked like me. I mean, everybody either was white, obviously not me, or they were of mixed race and they had this long curly hair and they had very European features, pointy nose, thin lips, blue gray eyes, something like that. obviously not me. I remember a lot of the baby dolls inside of the store. It was really difficult to get a black baby doll. And if you did, she was like really dark. And the hair on the black baby dolls was just way worse than the ones on the white baby dolls. So for the longest, I carried around this little white baby doll, not really thinking that, like the white baby doll and the black baby doll tests that I think a lot of people are probably familiar with. It wasn't that I was thinking that. It's just that I like to comb this baby doll hair better because it was more manageable. So I used to carry this white baby around with this blue eyes and this blonde hair, and it was like my favorite baby doll. And my family used to be like, why are you taking this baby doll everywhere? And I was just like, because her hair is the best. So those were the types of things that I grew up with. I grew up as a dark skinned, highly melanated young sister. You know what I'm saying? My dad's from the islands. My dad's really dark. My mom is the shade of brown she is. As Black people, we are 40 to 50 different shades of brown. We got that going on too, which is also magnificent. Only race that can do that. And I won't say the only on that one, but definitely we have a lot more shades than some other ones. But anyway, so that's all I saw. That was all that I saw. I grew up with that. You look inside of magazines, that's what you see. When you're watching TV, that's what you see. When you go to the store and you're trying to get a baby doll, that's what you see. And so over time, that begins to affect a person mentally and emotionally, to thinking that this is obviously more acceptable and I don't fit into that. And so you just go into this survival mode and you go on that status quo, like, I guess that's just the way it was. And until you get to a certain place, where I did when I got my locks, and I realized, oh my God, I can't believe that I was this uncomfortable with my physical appearance. So how in the world could I possibly even consider truly loving myself if I can't love my physical appearance? If I can't, not what other people think, not what it is that I see out there, or what someone else's perception of what beauty is, because people have different types of beauty standards and that's totally up to them. For me, it was important for me to know that I was beautiful, that I am beautiful just the way that God made me. And that journey got started with hair. Okay. So hair is just definitely something that we've experienced in a form of trauma in our families and in our generations, but also colorism. Okay, colorism is something that we've experienced negatively around the world of the African diaspora. It's been infected with that form of racism or colorism, where lighter and the closer to European is better, and the darker you are, the worse. And that's been proven in many different ways with dark and light inside of the dictionary and all of these different things. Okay, like I just described, as you see, your girl is a highly melanated sister and proud of it. So there was a lot of that going on. And a lot of times we experience this type of trauma with inside of our own families, okay? Inside of our own families, inside of our own extended families, inside of our own race. And if you don't think that that starts to affect a person mentally, you are absolutely wrong. So of course that's going to affect you mentally, that's going to affect you emotionally. And I'll never forget this as a little girl, because this is the type of trauma that's stored in the DNA that happens a lot of times within our lifetime that I'm talking about. Okay. So I think I was maybe in like 7th or 8th grade. And I liked this guy in school. And he was actually quite a bit darker than me, right? And I liked him. I liked his personality. I thought he was cute, or whatever, whatever kind of, the knowledge of and understanding I could have at that age. And I thought that I was going to go tell him, or I told his friend, you know how we used to do. I told his friend that I liked him. And his friend told him. Now, I overheard this conversation. I don't think to this day he knows that I know this, but I overheard them and him saying, hey, Zipporah likes you, right? And he was like, she's all right, but she's too dark. My God, I started bawling. I started crying so hard, and I was heartbroken. I could even feel that. Like, I can time travel back to that feeling back then. I even get teary-eyed thinking about that little girl, thinking about how that little girl felt about someone and what they felt about her appearance, that she was ugly because of the color of her skin. And I remember my sister actually came through on that one because she saw me crying. She's like, yo, what happened? And I told her, and she made me feel really good about that situation. However, that really tormented me, you know what I'm saying? And I went on to be an adult and experience other types of experiences as well, because of the color of my skin. So those types of traumas that are stored inside of our DNA, and those types of traits that come from slavery that's within inside of our own family, those things definitely need to be addressed and actually need to be healed, starting with ourselves. Okay. So let's fast forward back on up to the lock story, right? So we've gotten past this crap and now we're starting to really come into knowledge of the magnificence of that hair, of the magnificence of the amount of melanin that I have, of how that makes me more connected to the cosmos, how that makes me more connected to certain types of spirits and energy and access to things in my DNA. Whoa, baby, we on a ride now, okay? Because not only am I loving myself physically, but it's starting to enhance the pride. You know what I'm saying? Now I have more pride in who I am as I am, because I think God didn't make no mistakes on me. You know what I'm saying? There were no mistakes here. So I'm starting to tap into loving myself mentally, physically, mentally, and emotionally. And it gave me a sense of pride and a sense of confidence. And all of a sudden, as my locks started to grow, because I remember I used to always, like, guys used to always try to holler at me when I had my wigs and my ponytails and all this stuff. Oh, I never had no problems, okay, with somebody, trying to holler at me. As I got my locks, those types of guys that used to try to holler at me, they stopped. And it turned into a different type of guy. It was guys who were into natural women. It was guys who were rooted. It was more protector, provider type of guys. Was guys who preferred, no makeup and natural hair and things like that. So that gave me a whole nother awakening right there. Okay. But I realized that for some of these guys that used to like me before, what it is that they preferred. They were still functioning from an unhealed version or trauma that had been passed down since slavery and unaware of it. Okay. So now we fast forward on up to I got this pride and I got this sense of confidence. Okay. And this goes back into knowledge of self. Once you know who you are, honey, you move different. Okay. You think different, you act different, you move different. People can no longer narrate your story. Okay. You create your own story, your own truths, and you live by that. Okay, so taking care of myself and loving myself is something that's at the top of my list of things to do. Spirituality and keeping that connection to God, the cosmos, my ancestors, my spirit guides is extremely important for me. Second in line would have to be self-love. Okay, so if I'm finding myself in any sort of depressant state, I'm in tune with that kind of stuff, then I'm immediately going to go ahead and take a break and do what it is that I need to do to love myself first, because I realize if I can't love myself first, there's no way that I can love other people properly. And then on top of that, if I can't love myself as I am, then I can't respect and love other people as they are. Okay. So this is something that definitely is a trauma and a curse that's been passed down since slavery, that we can begin to heal within ourselves and we can begin to heal within the generations forward. So let's normalize having self-love for ourselves. Let's normalize telling that little Black girl, that little dark-skinned girl, how beautiful she is, telling that little light-skinned girl how beautiful she is, and he or him as well. Let's normalize saying, oh, you got some magnificent hair that's connected to the cosmos, giving these children the sense of pride from an early age. We have the ability to take something that may seem so simple, but is actually extremely powerful, to begin to start to heal generational trauma that's within inside of our DNA that has been extended to us from slavery. Because before that, it wasn't none of that. Okay. Like the planet didn't know nothing about that. It did not matter what color you were. It didn't matter what kind of hair you was. It was God didn't make no mistakes on you. Okay. It wasn't until slavery, this particular form of slavery, the transatlantic slavery that infected the whole entire earth, basically, with racism and colorism and making the white supremacist, white dominant culture prevalent. Okay. So then if you're not like that, then the further away from that you are, the less you are. Okay. So that's why I say let's normalize it. So when I see certain things like on social media and I'll see these little girls and they're just telling them, how beautiful they are, and they got this, 4C hair, and they just rocking it in an afro puff, and you got these afros running around. I think it's absolutely amazing. Okay. And I say that not to bash anybody who chooses to wear wigs and weaves and things like that, because as I just expressed, it was a journey for me. I had a long time pattern of wearing whatever styles y'all got, I wore it. So it's more of a journey with this. And the thing is being able to love yourself. So if you find yourself where I just don't feel as pretty without my hair, because I've heard people say that before, that's definitely something that needs to be looked into, a form of shadow work that needs to be explored a little bit more so that we can find ways to be able to love ourselves as we are 100%. And I get it. Some people feel like they feel fierce, when they've got their lashes and they've got their hair on and all of these things. But if you don't feel just as fierce without that, then that means there's some work to be done if you choose to do that. Now, you may be totally comfortable where you are with that, but for those who are starting to heal generational trauma and curses, because that is a curse. I mean, if you really want to curse somebody, get them to hate the way that they look. Okay, get them to feel bad about who they are, something they have no control over. You know what I'm saying? Something that they were born into, and think that that doesn't affect the person on a spirit level. Okay, so this has had a hold on us for 400 years. Willie Lynch, I talked about that in a TikTok video as well, had a lot to do with that as far as the colorism aspect about pitting the light-skinned Negro against the dark-skinned Negro. And all of this stuff was intentional and by design, okay? And a lot of this we adopted from slavery and we started passing down and we started using within our own families, okay? So the shit's got to stop, basically. And so the way that I move and I carry myself, and when I walk in the room as a dark-skinned, highly melanated 4C kinky sister, okay, is powerful because of the way that I carry myself, because of the pride that I have, because of the confidence that I have, and the knowledge of self is evident when I step into the room. So I've taken that negative that I experienced as a young girl with inside of my family, and I was actually able to turn that around and begin to heal that. And with my girls, they went natural pretty early. Actually, my oldest daughter, she went natural when she was 12 years old on her own. She just was like, you know what? I'm done with it. And she's been natural ever since. And my youngest daughter followed suit after her. Okay. So this is how we begin to heal generational traumas with inside of our family. And so they understand, like the importance of and the nurture and the care of their natural self, as do I, and my body and my spirit and everything tends to resonate with natural more than anything. That's like natural soaps, natural foods, natural things that I put in my hair. It's just my body responds better to that, and it allows me to vibrate at a higher frequency. And that is a superpower. Okay. So that is pretty much all I wanted to discuss in this one. I would love to hear you guys' comments. I'm going to have a question down in the comment section. Please interact with that. Go ahead and follow this podcast if you haven't already. Be sure to support the podcast as well. I'll have that link down there, and follow me on my other social media platforms, guys. Let's begin to start to heal this generational trauma, and let's normalize, specifically for this episode, self-love and healing as Black women in the diaspora. All right, guys, until the next video. Peace.